What about if your dryer isn't spinning to begin with? What would you sort of look at going into that one?
Gotcha. So if your dryer isn't spinning at all, of course, the first thing you always want to do is to make sure you have power, make sure your lights are coming on. The next thing you want to do is to check the actual door switch that is activated when the door closes. You can check it with a meter if you access it, but even just pushing on it, you should hear or feel some resistance. You should kind of hear a click. If you don't have any of that, then most likely your switch is bad. Also, with the door open, push the switch and see if the inside light turns off. If the inside light doesn't turn off, obviously the switch is bad. It doesn't recognize the door shut, so it never will spin. Some other common issues, especially in units that have a control rather than a mechanical timer, when the belt breaks, a lot of dryers won't recognize that the belt is broken, but the unit won't spin. So what it looks like is you'll start the cycle and it'll even count down, but nothing's happening. And that is because most likely either the belt broke, or if prior to this happening, you noticed that the dryer was getting louder and louder and louder, most likely what happened was the tension idler pulley has been going out for some time. It finally went completely out, the belt slipped off, and so now it's not spinning. So what happens when the belt breaks or it slips off the tension pulley, when that tension pulley falls down, because it's not being held up by the tension of the belt, it'll activate or deactivate a switch so that the dryer knows that something's happened with the belt and it will not send power to the motor, kind of like a safety switch almost. That usually doesn't go bad. It's usually because the belt's broke or the idler goes bad. So that's a big reason that it doesn't turn. If it's trying to turn, one thing you can do if you remember which way your drum spins is to turn the dryer on, to hold down the door switch, to press start, and to give your dryer kind of a tug. And if you could start it when you give it a good push, then most likely your motor's going bad. Motors and dryers don't typically go bad. I would say probably the most common brands where I've had to change them is in Samsung. I think, let's see, so the door switch, the idler. Also, in some cases, it could be a control board issue. So the control boards for the dryers, again, one's with an electronic control and not a mechanical timer. Those have two big relays on them. A relay is basically like a switch. So one of the relays controls the power that goes to the heating element. The other relay controls the power that goes to the motor. If someone's able to access that control board, a lot of times if something's bad with the power from the control board, you can actually take that board out of its plastic casing, flip it over, and you'll actually see burn marks on the bottom. It's obvious that it's burnt and you'll just need to replace the board. As far as a component that can cause the drum not to spin, one of the few different thermal fuse and those type of components, the main thermal fuse that's mounted on the blower housing is what the power passes through before it goes to the motor. So if that thermal fuse is blown, again, it'll count down, it thinks it's operating fine, but it's not spinning due to that thermal fuse being blown. It is always mounted on the blower housing, and so if one can access that, all they need to do is get a meter and do a continuity check on that fuse, and it should beep. If there's no beep, if it's open, 100%, that's the issue.